I'm delighted to be joined as my guest today, Maria Walsh. So, Maria, welcome to LGBTQ+life.
Thank you very much, Wix, for asking me on.
No, well, it's been a long time coming, Maria. But before we start, I just wanted to, shall we say, remove a few perhaps misapprehensions. Now, first of all, you've never won the Rose of Tralee, am I correct?
Correct. Now, I would, like to try maybe sometime, but I don't think they're ready for the Maria Walsh that is me, the original, I might say.
I agree. And you've also never been a member of the European Parliament.
No, only in my head when I give out to them. Yeah.
Yeah. Maria, the reason why I first encountered Maria Walsh was you were a member of Zrazy, and I wasn't around here in the 80s and the 90s when, Zrazy were winning awards left and right and centre. But where I first encountered Zrazy was a couple of years ago at Winter Pride in the National Concert Hall. And I had never heard of Zrazy before, be perfectly honest. That's my ignorance. But my partner and I, who were there and saw you for the first time, we had no dispute about this. You were the standout act. Now, I don't know, you'd been playing for a while, but my God, it looked like you'd never stopped because you really did. You caught our attention, and I thought you were absolutely fabulous musically and performance-wise.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we've been at it. We're experienced, Yeah, we're around a long time.
Yeah. Am I correct in thinking that this year is the 30th anniversary of your first album?
That would be
1993.
Yeah,
it might have come out 92.
Yeah, you're almost correct. I mean, in a way, it's kind of it's a movable feast. I think we brought out our first single in 92, and yes, the album in 93. I think you're right.
Yeah, and for some reason or other, and it's often the case with the really talented people, you were bigger abroad than you were at home. Is that correct? Particularly in North America.
Yeah, we were, the kind of music we were making was very different to what was going on in Ireland back in 1990, 91, 92, 93. That was very much, boys with guitars, that type of sound, rock. We were just doing kind of jazzy, soul, acid jazz, even kind of interested in, we were doing house, dance stuff, pagan funk is the way we described our first album. And of course we were out gays, out lesbian, and the queer. The world back then in 1990 was just like, unbelievably backward, you'd have to say, in Ireland, so we just found our audience abroad in the States. So we would go tour in the States twice a year, morning. I was going to say morning and evening. I meant spring and autumn. Spring and autumn, spring and fall. And then we also played a lot in Europe, in Germany, where there's fantastic music scene, and particularly women's music scene. And you can say that's sometimes a euphemism for a lesbian. Very, very strong gay lesbian music scene in Germany, and a little bit in France and some in Holland. So yeah, that's where we used to really make our living and get our audience. So we would just come back and occasionally do some stuff in Ireland, but that's, yeah.
I should mention, of course, that the other participant in Zrazy is your partner in music, Carol Nelson. We don't want to leave Carol out of it. Now, I'll have to take your word, because I wasn't in Ireland in 1992. I was in Australia, where the LGBT scene was a great deal livelier. And when I came back here eventually in 95, it was still pretty backward then compared to what I knew. It was quite introspective. It wasn't this, in your face the way it is to a certain degree now. I mean, did you, as an LGBTQ plus woman, did you find that very stifling, or did you did that feed into your music to a certain degree?
Look, we were always kind of, pushing against it, battling away. and we were kind of the only ones out, in on a kind of public level or in a national kind of level. So we used to get, but the problem with that was we used to do these interviews on RT every now and then, or a show, or the Sunday Independent. It'd be like a little bit like in the zoo, the lesbians in the zoo perspective, like we're specimens. And so it got very voyeuristic that way, and really tedious and boring. We were just, our attitude was just kind of get on with it. It's just a fact. Get over it. Get on with it. Move on. But the Irish media was terribly slow, which I suppose just represented the Irish society at the time.
Irish masculinity, even.
Yeah, and Irish masculinity. I mean, all of that. I mean, I've always said that Ireland is kind of socially a good 30 years behind the UK, and then it's also about 50 years behind the States, socially, progressively, that kind of vibe. Things have changed a lot very quickly in the last few years. People have become so much more confident now, out and confident and not having to explain themselves. And
was it worse for women? Because I heard Mary Dorsey talk again at Pride, and she's very critical of the way women, particularly LGBT women, were treated and the questioning that was put to them. And the same thing when I first saw, and it's only a couple of years ago, the Late Late Show with Joni Crone, and I thought, oh my God, it's almost like a modern day Salem in that sense of the word, that somehow or other that women aren't allowed to make their own decisions sexually. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. She's right there. First of all, we are, we're still dealing with the system of patriarchy. That's at the root of everything here, So there's still male dominion everywhere. Turn around, everywhere we look, we don't have 50-50 representation in anything, from government to media to or normal parochial parish life. And it's even a bit worse down the country in many ways in that, where, from Tipperary. But so, yeah, the female thing is we're still dealing with certainly sexism, and then the lesbian thing is kind of dealt with in that prurient way, I may say, or has been anyway. But I think, what's fantastic now is that to see the Irish women's team and to see women's soccer in particular, women's football in particular, is just absolutely stunningly refreshing, because it's got all these, there's loads of players who are queer, loads of players. There's a great mix. I mean, it's so different to the men's football world, and it's bringing this extraordinary new love of watching their game and who they are, and they're being themselves, and they're not having to explain anything. It's like, well, stop talking about sexuality. We're here playing football, and that's the way we used to feel. Is like, stop talking about sexuality. We're musicians first.
Yeah.
Does anybody, ask about the heterosexual band U2 to explain themselves? The boy band U2 to explain themselves. If we were all female, they call us an all female band. It's called U2 an all boy band. This kind of just basic stuff.
Well, it's interesting, and I'll come back to the football in just a second, but I remember a couple of years ago, I think it's Brendan something or other, he used to have a Saturday night programme on RTE. Now, I seldom watch RTE on a Saturday night, but for some reason or other, it was there. And he had two of the women on from Pussy Riot, who I thought were incredibly brave women and very courageous women. And one of the questions he asked, and I thought, oh, for God's sake, you're back in school. He said, what was it like for you to be in prison? And I think he was hoping that, we had sex with each other every night. It was, it was just such a puerile question. I couldn't believe that he actually asked it. And this is a respected journalist. Is that the sort of thing that you perhaps encountered on your way through the music vista?
I was just thinking of which Brendan are you talking about there, and then I realised you mean
he writes for the Examiner, I think it is, or he's a very respected journalist. But he used to have a Saturday night program on RTE, and and generally a very good journalist.
There has been, and there are still attempts to ask prurient questions, and it's just like, please. I don't ask you about your sex life. Just ask me about my art. Ask me about music. You're not going to ask that question of Katie Lang when she shows up in town, or Boy George, or what do you do, with your boyfriend, or whatever. It's just no.
Yeah.
Boring.
I want to come back to the football question because. First of all, I didn't know you were a big fan before today, and I apologize for taking you away from today's game. But 8 years ago, I was here on my own, and the Women's World Cup was on in Canada. Now, it doesn't have the prominence that it does now. And it was on late at night because of the time difference. And I started to watch it. And I started to watch it with a fresh pair of eyes. Now, if you watch women's football through the prism of male eyes and expect to see the Premier League, you're going to be disappointed. But if you see it for what it is, I found it incredibly skillful and incredibly entertaining. And I've watched the World Cups since then. I've watched the European Championships, and I've loved every minute of it. Is that what you think males need to do? You have to watch it with a fresh set of eyes, and women's sport in general.
Yes, that's totally true. There's no less skill in actual fact. It's going to be ever so slightly slower, and purely as in, the difference between a male runner and a male sprinter and a female sprinter is there's, about 1 second, 2 seconds difference in speed because of the musculoskeletal nature. Sure. So that's the difference. Apart from that, if you were to look at you do, as you say, do not try and impose the men's game on a female game that you're watching. No, you're watching it with the musculoskeletal physiques of women doing their thing on the pitch. But the skill is no less evident because actually before I tell you about this brilliant ad that's on in France at the moment, and it's been a huge success, but it's the same thing in women's golf, for example, which I have taken back up. I used to play it when I was a kid in Tipperary when there was nothing else to do, make it. But the female professional golfers are absolutely as skillful, if not even more so than the men. And but they're not getting proper media sponsorship and blah blah blah, and the money and promoting it and all the rest of it. But they are fantastic, and female tennis players and all that. So, but yeah, there's this very clever advert run by Orange, the giant telecom company who is sponsoring the French team, the women's team. It's about 2 minutes in length, this video. You got to Google it. You are ostensibly watching what you think they're advertising the Women's World Cup and the French team. Except, what are we watching here? We're watching Mbappe and Griezmann. These are the male players in France, the top guys. We're watching them score those fantastic goals and have this amazing skill and dribbling. And then what happens? The big reveal.
Ah, c'est passé. Oui, c'est passé. Oh, oui. Bien sûr que c'est passé. Maintenant, faut que ça aille au bout. Allez. Ouais, c'est bien joué. Il n'y a plus qu'à la pousser. Il n'y a plus qu'à la pousser. Voilà. C'est pénalty, ça. C'est fait. Les Bleus qui reviennent dans le match. Et on a encore le droit de rêver. Avec le pied droit. Quel toucher de balle extraordinaire. Là, il y a un bon ballon de contre à jouer. Bien fait le pour le centre en prêt. Bah oui, bravo. Il va direct. Il est direct. Le centre en prêt. Oh, le geste d'ailleurs. Ah, la tête piquée. Oh, super. Allez. belle cette équipe. Ouais, c'est ça, le football qu'on aime. C'est ça, les Bleus qu'on aime.
So that's the big reveal, and it absolutely kills it. You know, it just shows you that the point is that the women's game is just as skillful.
Sure. Something I want to come to you about, because what I know a little bit more about is sport in Australia, because I lived there for 20 years, and something that's incredibly big, and Irish women are incredibly prominent there as well, is Australian rules football. Now, Australian rules football is a very, very physical game. It's not as physical as rugby, but very much, it's athletic and physical. And what I was really interested in an interview I saw about 6 months ago with one of the Irish participants was, they were saying about 70% of the women on the Australian rules, the Premier League teams, were LGBT and were very open about it. Now, when I was watching the World Cup with people in late last year, I was saying to people, there's 700 players here, something like 25 a squad and 32 squads or something like that. There was quite a lot anyway. And I said, none of them are gay. Which is physically, statistically, it's impossible. Why do you think that the women are so much more confident of outing themselves and being open about this, rather than whereas the men, we hear the rumors and all of that, but there's still no Premier League player who's active who's actually come out and said, I'm gay. Most of them after they've retired.
Well, first of all, I was going to say, when I was asked this before, is that it's a question that you have to ask men, really. Ask a man about it, ask men to think about that. But I was also reading, because I don't know what's going on in their heads, really. But I was reading a very good interview in Hot Press, actually, with Vera Powell. Really recommend it. She goes into great detail. And she's asked that question, and I thought her answer was interesting. She said that, there is a strong, the background of soccer, there's a strong, and from where it came perhaps as well, there's a strong element of machismo in male sports, and in soccer, and that, I suppose, therefore, they have difficulty with their notion of masculinity. Once machismo comes into it, then they're afraid. It's a fear, isn't it, of any kind of vulnerability. I mean, that's the whole disease of machismo, really. It's this terrible fear of vulnerability and showing so-called weakness. Whereas, of course, if men would cry regularly, we'd have far less bloody wars and mad men running the world.
Is that an advocate for Paul Gascoigne to be Prime Minister?
No, come on, Nick. Come on. But he's a good guy. No, but boys are brought up that way. Don't cry. They're shamed. They are shamed, and that is that's the worst thing you could do to a boy or to a girl, but boys in particular. And so, in other words, they're left growing up as adults with, you got to bottle it in. Keep it tight, keep it bottled in. Don't show weakness. They see it as weakness, whereas, of course, crying is a strength. Showing your vulnerability is a strength.
Yeah. One of the main reasons we wanted to talk to you today, Maria, is you've written shall we say, a theme song for the Irish women in the World Cup. And I'm going to call them women because they are not girls, they are women. But it's not the first time you've played a football ditty, is it? I believe you were active in the field in 1990, Italia 90, the benchmark for Irish football in many respects.
Yes, we wrote. Yeah, Ooh Ah, Paul McGrath was the big hit back then. And my longtime colleague in Zrazy, Carol Nelson, wrote that song, and I did the vocals. And we were managed at the time by Eamon Carr of Horselips. And Polygram approached him and asked him, could you get, the girls at the time to write a song based around the chant Ooh Ah, Paul McGrath. Mm-hmm. So that's what we did, and so it's the first and only time I think that it was the first football song to ever have a female vocal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is it a difficult theme to address? Because when I hear that Ireland song before the rugby, I always cringe and I think, oh my God, this is the sort of thing you really would need a few whiskies for. Now, other people love it. I'm not going to knock that, but other people do love it. But is it something that doesn't necessarily flow easy, or is it? Ooh Ah, Paul McGrath was a terrific one, and it caught the mood of the time. And not only that, we were winning, which was something quite unusual for the Irish team. But how did that come about in that sense of the word? I'm not talking about the production, but the conception
of Ooh Ah.
Oh, yeah. Clearly that's what they were saying at the games.
Okay, that it came about because the soccer terraces on the soccer came up with the chant Ooh Ah, Paul McGrath. Originally, it was before that it was Ooh Ah Cantona for a while, and then it was finally defined by Ooh Ah, Paul McGrath. So we write the song around it based on that. So that was just an easy up-tempo one. Sure. It's very different from, the thing behind this current one that I've written for Ireland, Ireland's women, is along the lines of getting a chant going, an upbeat thing. It's whereas Ireland's Call, for example, that's an anthem, that's kind of pushed as an all-Ireland anthem beside the Irish national anthem. Whereas this is it's a pop song. It's a typical football song with a simple chorus line, a simple chant, and my great dream would be that it gets loads of airplay, which is still a little bit skinny, I have to say. The national airwaves are not supporting it, in the way they should, in my estimation. For get behind the song, get behind the team, let's get people singing it. I actually heard the crowd in Sydney last week singing We're All Part of Jackie's Army. Come on.
Oh, that's a while ago, isn't it? Yeah.
This is a women's football song written by a woman, and, please support it, the national radio airwaves.
Well, we do have supporters of this program in Australia because I've got friends there. So we will make sure that a copy, that it's sent there. Coming back to the football itself, how did you find the game against? I hate the term the Matildas. God, where do they get that one from? They probably decided we better not use the Sheilas. But how did you find the game against Australia? It was tight. We were a bit unlucky, but I still thought we played quite well.
Oh yeah, I think we really did. We played very well. It was a cagey, nervy first half, but to go in 0-0 at halftime was fantastic. That was a big result. I think secretly people, they wouldn't say it maybe in public, I know one or two did, secretly people were expecting Ireland to possibly be beaten 2-0 or 3-0 because Australia are top seeds. So it was a damn fine, honourable defeat, and only going, and then we did start to play with more positivity and more belief. That's a key thing, I think, with the Irish team. I think Vera Pauw is a brilliant coach, and that she gets them learning from every single match. We're so lucky to have her.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they've been calling it the group of death. I know that's one of those horrible football cliches, but there's still a possibility we could do okay and get to the next round. Mm-hmm.
I absolutely think so. I think they can. I think they can beat Canada. And I think they can beat Nigeria. Mm-hmm. You know, at worst we might get a draw with Canada, but I think they are well capable of performing against Canada, and I think we should beat Nigeria as long as we can match their strength and physicality.
Yeah, and I suspect you will be as disappointed as I will be when, if you have a look at the papers over the weekend, what did we focus on? We focused on some tiff between two players rather than the football itself. I mean, that goes back to the idea of the paternalism again that we were talking about earlier in the program.
Yes. What was the tiff again? Remind me.
Oh, one of the two of the Arsenal players, Mike going out with the Irish captain, and she was going out with some
woman, gotcha.
And we discovered somebody went on holidays with somebody, you know, which got nothing to do with football, you know, absolutely nothing to do with football.
No, and they wouldn't do that to the men's football team, would they? I mean, no. They just wouldn't. And even asking Vera Pauw that question before the team were heading off to Australia about the allegations, once again, you know, these lazy, sloppy allegations that have been anonymous as well. But even posing the question at a press conference, do you think they'd do that to a male soccer coach, the national coach going off? I mean, they'd actually laugh. I mean, the team would laugh, the coach would laugh. It would be seen as a joke.
True.
So there are double standards, Mick, when it comes to men and women all the time. Double standards.
Yeah. Just before we go, Maria, were you a footballer yourself back in the day?
Yeah.
Not that you've given it up, I say.
But you know something, my weakness was I could never head the ball because I have this sort of delicate neck or something, I don't know. And I used to, for a while, I used to wear glasses as a 15-year-old. But I played football with my brother. I played everything. I did, you know, soccer, Gaelic football, tennis, a bit of tennis, squash, golf. As I said, there was nothing else to do in Tipperary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you might have saved yourself early onset dementia by not heading the ball, because I gather that heading the ball is not actually conducive to long-term health. So who knows? In fact, I wouldn't be disappointed if they took it out of football entirely, because to me, I couldn't head the ball because I had to wear glasses as well. I'm with you on that one. Last but by no means least, Maria, we're going to put you on the spot. Give us a prediction for where Ireland will finish in the Women's World Cup, and perhaps who you think might win it, because I suspect you have a bit of a soft spot like I do for Ms. Rapinoe.
Oh, yeah. Rapinoe has been fantastic. You say Rapinoe, I say Rapinoe. Frankly, I don't know. I don't know what's the correct. But she is just magnificent.
Isn't she?
What a creature.
Yeah.
Just superb.
Yeah.
Well, I think Ireland will get out of the group.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know who they're going to meet after that. But I think they will get out of the group. I think they'll beat Canada 1-0 or 2-1. I think they will, or we might draw Canada and beat Nigeria 1-0. We'll come second in the group, and I think Germany are possibly versus England. I'll go for.
Yeah. The old
in the final.
Yeah. Maria, we're going to try and get everybody to listen to and even chant "Come on, Ireland." But in the meantime, you keep being creative and keep being fabulous. So, Maria Walsh, thank you for your time today.
Thanks very much for asking me, Mick.
I feel so good.